Hello, this is Karen Johnson. I'm filling in on Impact's Government section today for Nick Barber, who's a little under the weather, and we wish him a speedy recovery. We're very pleased today to have as our guest Bernard Bryant, who is the new president of the Albany County chapter of NAACP and has a wonderful, interesting background and a lot of excitement for his new job. So Bernie, I noticed that you've been in Albany working in the legislature for many, many years.
Yes.
You've had a lot of adventures. Tell us
Well,
about
even
that.
before there, I grew up in Albany. My family moved here from New York City when I was 3 years old in 1950. So, I guess I'm telling my age, but so I grew up basically, essentially in Albany. I graduated from Milne High School, which is no longer in existence, but was a intermediate and high school model school with the Teachers College. And then I did my undergraduate training at Howard University in Washington, D.C., in a historically black college. And then after I had a little detour due to the Vietnam War. I was drafted into the military and then completed my professional training at Albany Law School in the class of 1973. But I have had some very interesting experiences in the Assembly. I basically, out of law school, I started working in the public defender's office, but then the Watergate scandal broke kind of substantially, and the Assembly, which had up to that point had been a Republican majority, had turned into the Democratic majority, and I was able to get a job in the New York State Assembly, first in a majority leader's office, and then eventually in the Speaker's Counsel's office, where I remained. Well, the name changed from Counsel's office to Programming Counsel office in the late 80s when Speaker Miller came in, Mel Miller. But I remained there until 2006, when I retired from the state, December of 2006.
So you worked for 4 speakers.
Yes.
And you have many secrets you could tell, but you won't be doing that.
The institution is a very it's a dynamic institution, and what it was in the 1970s is not what it was in the 21st century. It evolved into a much more professional and how should I put it, substantive branch of government. Basically, back in the 70s. The legislature really didn't begin to have the expertise to fashion a budget or rewrite a budget or to negotiate it in a very effective way. And one of the enduring things that one of the best speakers I worked for was a man named Stanley Fink. He professionalized the place quite a bit, and he made sure that central staff, which was what I was a part of, and the Ways and Means staff had a lot of professional practices and basically became a counterweight, an effective counterweight to the executive, which of course the governor controlled.
And we're seeing that today. And
Yes.
I think we wouldn't be getting as sophisticated and well thought out legislation as we are.
Correct. I mean, the days of the governor sending it up to the third floor, which is where the legislature is, and saying, do it because I said so, stupid. Those days are long gone. I mean, the legislature is, both houses are equal partners, and they do a very good job. Their staffs do a very, very thorough job of evaluating the legislation before it's brought to the floor.
So basically, you're a substance guy, you're a negotiator, you're
Yes.
a policy
Yes.
guy, and what a great thing to now be the president of the Albany chapter of the NAACP, because that touches on all those items.
It does, and one of the reasons why I didn't take a leadership. I've always been a member of the NAACP, but I didn't take a leadership role is because I was fearful that it possibly could conflict with my professional responsibilities to the New York State Assembly. Having freed up from that, and both my parents were active civically, and I've almost felt that I was duty bound to try to carry on their tradition. by doing something in an active role, taking a more active role civically. So that's why
So you get
I ran.
a new chapter in your life, and I think that's always fun. It's a challenge, and
It is.
it keeps you learning, and
Correct. Yeah.
and that's good. So what is the role of the NAACP? It's a very old organization.
I think it kind of brings to the fore the fact that while we're a multicultural society, not all segments of that multicultural mosaic, if you will, are equal. And that in order to have a strong democracy and in order to have a strong participatory democracy, any discernible differences between segments of our population really need to be done away with, and it's a true meritocracy, if you will. People rise and fall based on their merits, their energy, and their knowledge, and so forth, and the other extraneous factors don't come into play. I think part of my perception is that now that we have a black president and we've elected and re-elected him, a lot of sympathetic folks to black Americans, for example, or even black Americans, felt, oh, well, we've arrived. We did our civic duty. We went out and voted for a black president, so aren't I a wonderful person? But if you really ask any black person that you're acquainted with, candidly, well, did your life change or did your life circumstances change because Barack Obama is president? If they're honest with you, they'll say no. I mean, it didn't elevate me in any way, shape, or form in my business or in my personal life or whatever. It pretty much remained unchanged. And I think you do need an organization like the NAACP or that is locally based, where you can participate in a local way to maybe make an impactful change on black folks' lives, or African American lives, I guess is the PC way of saying it, but I'm still stuck on the 60s and black. But anyway, I mean, in order to have an impactful, how should I put it, footprint with the local communities and the local institutions that serve our community, you have to get involved. And so I think this is a nice outlet to do that in a peaceful way.
In Albany, what are some of the issues the NAACP has been working on, and some you'd like to work on?
Well, we are involved in currently a lawsuit dealing with the reapportionment of the county legislature, which it hasn't come to trial yet. It's still in pretrial stages, but we've been involved in that. We have been involved in some of the education reforms. We've been involved with health disparities and how the medical community doesn't necessarily have great tentacles into the black community in terms of preventive care, in terms of treatment and treatment options and so forth. We'd like to maybe do a lot more perhaps in the criminal justice area. And in some of the involvement of some of the legislation that may be pending in the state legislature that could impact our community. We can't. We're 401 or 501c, so we can't actively promote a candidate or whatever, but we can certainly get involved in a cause. And some of the legislation that's pending, we might want to get involved in. One of the things I'm intrigued by, and I'm trying to develop. We've got a dynamic young attorney who's heading our civics thing. Matthew Smalls is his name, and he's having his shakeout with his committee. But one of the things I hope that they are able to develop is a platform that coincides with what Chief Judge Littman seems to be crusading for, and that is bringing the New York criminal law, penal law, more in conformance with the rest of the country in terms of the age of criminal responsibility. I don't know if you're aware of this, but only New York and North Carolina criminalizes minor nonviolent conduct by 16-year-olds as crime, as an adult crime. You got Texas and Mississippi, Alabama, all these so-called red states that kind of focus on crime and punishment. And the age of criminal responsibility is 17, 18, or whatever. And I think it's a shame that New York is still, and if you look at the genesis of it, Judge Littman makes the case that it was really by accident that we ended up with a age 16 age of criminal responsibility. So that's one of the things we hope the New York State Legislature will take up this session, and we would certainly support. The problem I perceive is, we aren't very cautious at those ages, 16 or 17. I'm sure everybody can look back to those years and say, well, I sure was lucky I didn't get caught in,
Yes.
in that circumstance, because I never would even dream of doing anything like that now. But it's a permanent record. 30 years from, when you're 46 years old, 30 years from 16, and you apply for a job, if you got pinched on a misdemeanor, a nonviolent misdemeanor, that is a public record, and it can come back to haunt you. And I don't think any of us could say that at age 46 we're the same person that we were at 16. I mean,
I hope not. At some other
we've
ages.
matured. And we have a family, and we have family responsibilities, and our thought process is a lot different.
Now, is it possible that your Albany NAACP could take the leadership on this on behalf of the entire NAACP in New York State? Or is that a different?
Well, like
don't
any
have that kind of
I don't
organization.
think we have that kind of clout. And like any institution, I would think if something good, if we are able to promote something good, I'm sure
They'll have followers.
There are a lot of other parents to something that's
Right.
good. I mean, what does they say? What is that expression? Something that happens that's good has many parents, but something that's bad is an orphan, or something of that sort.
Yes, I'm going to
something along
remember
those
that.
lines, So if we're successful, I think it's on the agenda. I was going to get into some of the
please do.
the national has set out what they call 5 game changers for the 21st century that they're encouraging all their branches to do, and they are. And I have a little cheat sheet because I don't want to have a brain freeze midway through the list and do my impression of Governor Perry not being able to complete the list. Economic sustainability, so that every person will have an equal opportunity to achieve economic success. Education, that would be a free, high-quality public education for all. The idea that, yes, if you're a moneyed person, you can send your child to private school and somehow secure a superior education to a person who doesn't have those means, we feel is undemocratic, that there should be an equal access to quality education. Health equality for all Americans, including the preventive care, and to wipe out any racially disparate health outcomes. Public safety and criminal justice, which we've already touched on a little bit. And then voter rights and political representation. 2013 in Albany is a year when our mayor is up for re-election, if he chooses to run for re-election. And we hope to be active in a voter registration effort to make sure that as many people who are eligible from our community is registered to vote so that they can participate in the general election. Whether it's the incumbent mayor or other candidates. Or Republican and Democrat, we would certainly want to have a role in that. And what they want us to do is to have at least 2 public forums involving one of these. So one of the things I hope to be able to develop later in the year is maybe in conjunction with the League of Women Voters or some other not-for-profit stakeholders, is to develop a public forum for candidates to speak and to be able to introduce themselves to the electorate and in general, in our community in particular.
So do you have regular meetings of the NAACP in a regular place you meet, or how does a person find out about that?
Okay. We have settled, our board decided to meet on the 2nd Wednesday of each month. And we don't have a regular home yet because we were auditioning places. The next meeting we have is what we call our Founders Day meeting. It'll be February 13th, and it's going to be at the Business Incubator at 255 Orange Street in the city of Albany. It's going to be a program that features one of the icons of the NAACP, Medgar Evers, who was assassinated 50 years ago while doing field operations. So one of our members is going to present to the branch a synopsis of his life story. His wife, or his widow, took part in President Obama's inauguration earlier this month. And I'm trying to secure someone from the academic community who might be able to frame what the civil rights movement in the 60s and 70s meant to this country and its maturation. So hopefully we can get some public participation in that. That's it. It's on February 13th at 7 p.m. in the Business Incubator, 255 Orange Street. And hopefully people will come out. Thereafter, we're going to meet there one more time at the Incubator in March, which is the second Wednesday in March. I don't have that date in front of me. And then Reverend Smart, who has the building, the GWU building, has offered to be our home for several months too. So we hope to secure the second Wednesday of April, May, and June at the GWU building that's on Washington Avenue in the city of Albany, just off of Henry Johnson Boulevard.
So if someone wanted to find out a little more about how to participate more actively in the organization, what would you advise them to do?
Well, they can contact the branch by writing NAACP Albany branch. We have a post office box, 2544, and Albany 12220. They can contact me. I am in a phone book. I don't think my...
Okay, Bernard Bryant, and I'm sure it's streaming across the bottom of
Correct.
this screen.
I am in the phone book. They can contact me. We do have a membership committee. So it's not just a one-person operation, and we will certainly welcome anyone who wants to participate. Our due structure is anachronistic. It's unrealistically low. You can become a member for $30 for a year. We do have a life membership structure as well, and that requires installment payments and so forth, $750, 10 installment payments of $75 a year. And there are various gradations of life membership. But if you just want to test the waters and see what we're about and see if it's worthwhile, for $30 you can get to come out and you have fellowship with people who are like-minded as you. You can find out about what's going on in your community. It gets pretty granular. We have committees that are functioning that'll be reporting to the body about things that are happening that are significant to our community.
You mentioned that you wanted to involve younger people. Does that include school children or 20s, 30s,
yeah, I think
40s?
I think there's a point where you don't want to get too involved. We do have a committee that does encourage youth participation, and that would be school age. SUNY has a chapter, as I understand it. I haven't really interfaced with them much. We're trying to make inroads at St. Rose and some of the other colleges and institutions that are within Albany County to get young people involved. There is a committee which hasn't really been formed yet that would target 21 to 40, under 40, so that they would hopefully become successors to the existing folks. Our demographic is pretty older. It's kind of older. People who are veterans of the civil rights movements in the 60s and the 70s mostly, and it's time for the next generation to assume a leadership mantle.
It is interesting, though, how each generation sees the world from their point of view, and people who were really strongly involved in the civil rights movement, perhaps the young people not having that experience, there's a necessity of communicating
Correct.
And making that real.
If you were the target of Jim Crow type behavior and the segregated facilities and the way our society was structured in the 50s and 60s and earlier than that too, if you were the subject of that and you experienced it, it's a life-changing experience, and you remember it and you keep it, you walk around with that. You're scarred about that for the rest of your life. But if you're a younger person and you never personally experienced that, but you've experienced in the workplace economic discrimination, and if you've go into a store at the mall and store security follows you around just because of your appearance. That's not to say that they don't have their own life experiences that are germane to the discussion, and that will help inform them as to what's maybe best for our community as a whole. One of the things that's not on the game changers that I really would like to focus on and help engage the young people on, the Occupy Albany movement, for example,
Yes.
focused on income disparity. You know, the enormous wealth of the 1% to the when compared to the 99% of modest means. Well, from my point of view, and speaking of the black community, the wealth disparity is a much greater significant issue to our community, I believe, than it is to the larger middle class construct. Most of the black folks who are in the middle class got there within the last generation or two, and the recession has really impacted them a lot in a lot more profound way than the greater population, because so much of their wealth was tied up, their so-called wealth was tied up in home ownership. So when the housing bubble burst, instead of there being a ratio between white wealth and black wealth of 15-1, which was prior to the bubble bursting, it shot up to 23-1, so that typically a white household has a wealth factor or a median wealth. It's CNN estimates 110,729. The black family has a wealth factor of 4,955. So it's like 22 times that of a black family. For Latinos, it's not much better. Their wealth factor is 7,424. So that the white household is 15 times more wealthy than they are.
It's amazing.
It's an amazing statistic, because we think of high unemployment with our youth, and yeah, that's a focus, and that's a factor, no question about it. But we're talking about mature, middle-income black folks who bought their McMansion in the suburbs,
And who are doing well.
Or doing well. They haven't experienced any unemployment, but they're living paycheck to paycheck. I mean, they're living less than paycheck to paycheck. If the roof goes on their McMansion, they don't have the resources to fix it. I mean, you think about it. If they have a household wealth of less than $5,000 and the roof goes, they got to go back and borrow some more money on their underwater property to fix the roof.
Right.
It's an amazing statistic, and I hope to engage the younger people in seeing that you're not going to be defined by your possessions. Just because you have a $100,000 a year job, you don't have to drive a Cadillac. You can drive a Ford, or you can drive a Chevy, and use the difference to build wealth.
Right.
And these are things that really I
give
hope to
my
bring.
children a book called The Millionaire Next Door. And
Right.
it's a
Okay.
great understanding of how people really amass wealth by living way below their means.
Way below, and that's what I think. Unfortunately, that was my generation blew it to some degree. Not that I'm not extravagant, but I'm married a lovely woman who's not extravagant. But so many of our contemporaries are. I mean, it's pretty shallow.
So I would say that the Albany NAACP is very lucky to have a person who has this policy background, this ability to focus and research issues, and sounds like also grow the organization. So I want to wish you the best of luck
Thank
in
you
your
so
new
much,
adventure.
Madam Mayor. Thank you so much.
And I know that you also are working in the consulting business and doing some
Yes.
lobbying, but all those contacts are going to be helpful in strengthening this organization that is so important to our communities.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I hope to be able to integrate the legislature more into the community. It's amazing the talent that comes to Albany 6 months out of the year. Those state legislators come from a varied background. Many of them look like us. Quite a number in the Black and Puerto Rican, Hispanic, and Asian task force community. They have their function later on this coming month. But we do have some genuine talent coming to our area on a regular basis, and Monday nights, Tuesday nights, there's not a whole heck of a lot to do in Albany. So it'd be nice if we could get them to come out and interface with our community.
Well, thank you so much for being on Impact today on our government section.
It's been my
It was
pleasure.
a great pleasure to have you here. And thank you all for watching Impact. We hope that your regular host, Nick Barber, is back before we know it. And enjoy the show, the rest of the Impact show.
Proctors, bringing the best in arts, education, and entertainment.